Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping says these measures to further open up China will be good for world peace, stability, and development. He's also calling for the fair treatment of Chinese enterprises, students, and scholars overseas.
We also hope countries in the world can create a favorable investment environment and equally treat Chinese enterprises, Chinese students, and scholars overseas, and supply a fair and friendly environment for them to normally conduct international communication and cooperation activities.
All right, for more on the Belt and Road Forum, we are joined by CGTN's Gerum Chala in Beijing. Gerum Chala, great to see you again. Well, President Xi has delivered his keynote address at the opening of the Second Belt and Road Forum. Can you tell us more about it and what African states should focus on, Gerum?
Richard, President Xi Jinping's speech can be called historic because over the last almost 6 years, the Belt and Road Initiative has been delivering for most of the countries in it, especially those in Africa, through infrastructure developments, including energy supply. But this time around, whatever President Xi Jinping was talking about, according to experts as well, is about painting the right picture that anyone can expect as part of the Belt and Road Initiative, what to expect the world would look like under the initiative itself. And he was putting things into perspective with giving us examples in all sectors. For example, for African states, something that we Africans can focus about is on the reduction of poverty. He said African states, or those developing states across the world, will be helped assist, also should work with China in order to alleviate poverty in those countries. He also talked about zero tolerance on corruption. Remember, many developing states are suffering this scourge, corruption, across their borders. So China's assistance in this regard will be instrumental. The third and most important part that I believe Africa should focus on is on the green development issue that President Xi Jinping talked about. From now on, developments will be environmentally friendly, and we no more are going to affect Earth that we call home, he said. And the final and most important issue that I think, should focus on here is that this Belt and Road Initiative is about changing the whole world as much as possible, make it a friendly place to live, where equality and protectionism, equality is going to be strengthened and protectionism should be dissolved. So whatever he said should be taken as a roadmap for implementing this Belt and Road Initiative, Richard.
Very interesting indeed. Gerum, let's talk about this a bit more. Perhaps you can unpack and zero in on certain African countries. We all know that China is the front runner on the BRI. How can other states, especially those in Africa, contribute to the successive implementation of the initiative? Gerum?
It takes two to tango, as the saying goes, and this cannot be an initiative that China only can play a role. As President Xi also earlier said, we should remember that this is an initiative from China, but this is an initiative that every member, remember 150 plus countries and organizations are now part of the Belt and Road Initiative, including those in Europe, the G7 countries like Italy and Portugal, those in Africa at the same time. So a collaborative effort exerted can only make the Belt and Road Initiative a reality on the ground. So African states, to be more specific, should also contribute in making every single aspect of the Belt and Road Initiative a reality by working together with the initiative, infrastructure developments and fighting corruption, and also making a friendly atmosphere available for any Chinese investor coming or them investing in this regard. So this is about a collaborative effort being exerted, as I was saying earlier, and this cannot be one waiting for the other to deliver, because President Xi, we should remember, said that if we work together, we can make the world a better place to live.
All right, Gerum Chala, thank you for breaking it down for us. Excellent reporting there, Gerum Chala in Beijing. Let's move on. Let's discuss this further. We are now joined in studio by Edward Kusewa, who is an economist and lecturer at the St. Paul's University. Sir, Edward Kusewa, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. First things first, what was your impression of President Xi's speech at the opening ceremony of the Second Belt and Road Forum?
Thank you very much. My impression is that it's China's commitment to the rest of the world in terms of technical and economic cooperation, and also enforcing the principles of equality, and also enforcing the principles of mutual benefit for common development, sustainable development, and helping African economies sustain their economic growth.
Now, one of the issues he talked about was infrastructure, saying massive infrastructure and trade plan should result in high quality growth for everyone.
True.
Now, how can Africa benefit from this?
I mean, as far as infrastructure is concerned, we speak about connectivity and intra-African trade, and also Africa trading with the rest of the world. So I think infrastructure plays a very crucial role in helping African economies grow, and especially helping African economies to be able to trade with one another more effectively.
Well, you spoke of some key issues that President Xi talked about. He also spoke of the 5 major goals of BRI, boosting connectivity, which you mentioned, in policy, infrastructure, finance, trade, and people-to-people exchanges. Which one of these, in your opinion, are you seeing steady progress in the continent, and which should be shored up from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the most important part for Africa is to help African economies come up with very clear-cut strategies on policy. Once we get the policy framework and the policy infrastructure straight, then everything falls in place. Infrastructure and other things, people-to-people exchanges fall in place. So I think what African governments and African economies need to really implement is come up with a framework of clear-cut strategies that surround policy.
Okay. Now, how is China helping African countries realize their economic development and agenda?
I think right now what we are seeing with the second BRI is that China is opening up its market, lowering out the trade barriers that exist for African economies to be able to export their fresh produce, agricultural produce to China. And I think China right now, seeing that it is relaxing some of the policies that it had in the past and enabling African economies export products that have in the past not been given an opportunity, especially products around agriculture, products around farm produce, and so on and so forth. So freeing trade barriers, helping African economies export to their country, and helping African economies generally in trade-related investments.
All right, Edward Kusewa, let's leave it there for now. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Hope to speak to you again really, really soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edward.
Yeah.